Okay, I am here with Sarah K.L. Wilson, USA Today bestselling author who has written almost 100 fantasy novels and novellas, with over 800,000 copies in circulation. I'm very excited to have you here. Like every time I read one of your books, I know I'm in for a dose of suffering, elation, joy, sorrow. But
and you got the new one. Thank you.
I did. I got the new one. I realized I didn't have this in hardcover. This is the 4-book Omnibus of Bluebeard's Secret. This was actually the first book I picked up by you. I'd heard about you for a long time. But my first question is actually about Fly with the Arrow, the first book in this series. First of all, what inspired you to write a Bluebeard retelling, and why did you go with Fae as such like capricious and devious and evil kind of beings?
So my sister's a family counselor, and she wrote an article for a magazine on the family dynamics in the original Bluebeard fairy tale. And it was really quite a cool article. I liked it a lot.
That sounds amazing.
Me being a fiction writer and not at all a counselor, I thought this would be a really fun fairy tale to retell. Fairy tale retellings were like very popular at the time. Everyone was doing like, Beauty and the Beast, Cinderella, that kind of thing. And I thought, but nobody ever does Bluebeard. And so I wanted the challenge of how in the world do you take somebody with a room full of dead wives and make him the hero of a story?
That was my question. I wasn't sure. I was like, how is this going to go down? But that is incredibly fascinating. Now I want to ask more about how the article influenced your writing the story,
Well, my sister's article really brought out the calling of the brothers, and there's a sister in the original tale too, and a mother in the original tale. I kind of got rid of the sister because I didn't have a place for her, and the brothers in my story are even more useless than the ones that she was looking at, but she was talking about women and how they work in family dynamics and whether in a patriarchy brothers are actually of any help if they're so far away, and all these kind of questions about family dynamics and about how you need a community to come to your rescue if you end up in a situation like the real Bluebeard story where the girl was really in a lot of trouble.
That is brilliant. Now I need to go find that article. I love that so much. I'm very happy I asked this question. Your books do a really excellent job. Like you create very high stakes without desensitizing the reader to what's going on. I've read books where it's just trauma after trauma and I stop caring, but your books just manage to amp everything up and keep me on the edge of my seat the whole time. So like, how do you do that?
I love high action books and I love fantasy. I even like dark fantasy where there's like a lot of violence. But I think that the ones I like the best, and the reason I try to do this in my stories, is the ones that don't forget that there's a huge cost to violence and a huge cost to everything that we do in the world, really. And I think a lot of times people like lose sight of that. So someone dies, your character kills them probably. If we can try to remember this is a person, like there's somebody out there mourning this person. The world is going to be different because they're gone. Maybe they were a terrible person, but they still maybe had a dog who loved them, or they maybe had a parent at some point who cared about them. I try to remember those things and as much as possible lean into them because I don't want to be desensitized to violence either. And I feel like in life, even our lives that are not that violent are very high stakes, or they feel very high stakes in the moment. And I don't want to lose that either because every day we're worried about, can I pay the rent? Can I pay the grocery bill? And that feels very high stakes. Imagine how intense it is if you're actually like running for your life. I hope that helps.
I really do like the way you even humanize characters who are evil, but then there'll be like a little tidbit in there that's like extremely humanizing, just like a tiny detail. I've noticed you doing this, but I can't think of a specific example right now, but I have appreciated it. I have noticed it in the past.
I got in so much trouble the last time I was in an interview because they asked me where I get my ideas for evil characters from, and I told them they all come from me, and they did not like that answer at all.
No, I relate to that. We all have dark pieces of ourselves. That's a very honest and humble answer. I appreciate that answer. I do. Oh, this actually does tie into Of Deeds Most Valiant because you had really good villains in this one. It really struck me in this that you write this very stark depiction of corruption, corrupt religious officials side by side with these characters who just have very sincere and pure faith. And like, how did you balance that in the story? Did you have to think about that very hard?
This is my favorite of the books I've written so far because it really dives down into who I am. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I love this book. So go on.
I think, for me at least, I think that in areas of faith, you get both the very best and the very worst of people. And I think it's because it hits so true and so close to the core of our humanity. When we talk about faith issues, it's like such a closely held value to people, regardless of their faith, that when they talk about them, when they act on them, you get both the very, very best of who that person is, and sometimes you get the very, very, very worst, because they are defending something possibly indefensible, or they're defending something that they believe is valuable but can't explain why, or they're doing it in a terrible way. And so I've had a lot of experience with people operating out of all those different dynamics of expressing their faith. And so I wanted to show that in a fair way, because you have terrible villains who come from a faith background and amazing heroes with huge open hearts. And I thought it would be amazing as much as possible to show how those things are side by side, true all the time. Like you have both those people operating, and sometimes they're the same person operating in both those roles all the time. And I don't know how well it went. I guess it went well for you, and I felt like it went well for me.
I can't shut up about this book, so I think it was great. My followers might be tired of hearing about it, but I love this book so much.
I felt so bad that I didn't get to the sequel before I went and signed a trade contract, but I do plan to write more of them.
I saw it was Poison Saints book number 1, and I have been clinging to that truth for a while. So
I have cover art for 2 more, and I just got interrupted.
Oh, well, that's okay. I can wait. It's okay. I'm patient. I'll keep talking about this book anyway. But this is kind of true for both Bluebeard's Secret and of Deeds Most Valiant, which are too heavy for me to lift with one hand. But I can't hold them both up right now. Like, I love how you write like pining and yearning, and your stories are, I would say, like low spice, almost no spice, but then it's like their hands brush, and it's like, oh my God. It's just like K-drama level intensity. So how do you do that?
I love pining books. Like, they're my favorite. I just like adore Daughter of the Forest and Echo North and all the ones where like there's hardly even romance on the page and you're just dying for it the whole time. You're like, when are they going to get together? Those are my favorite. And I don't know if it's because I spent so much of my teens being like a pining girl, pining for people who did not want me, or if it was some other reason. But I think even as an adult, I tend to be one of those people who is always wanting very badly something they don't have. And so it's easy then to translate that to the page. And also just because I love it so much. Those are my favorite romances. And I know they're not for everybody. Like my best friend is like, Sarah, for crying out loud, let them get together.
This was like one of the supreme slow burns I've ever read. It's just so amazing.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, but you do a lot of like the forbidden romance in this one too, the slow burn. I love that. I love that so much. I loved it in the Tangled Fae. I love it. I love it. Anyway, this is why I asked you on the interview. So
and I'm honored to be here.
Oh, thank you. I'll try to tamp down my fangirling long enough to ask the next question. I really love the language, the way you write, like especially the dialogue and everything I've read by you. But it comes across as like fairy riddles. If Shakespeare was a fairy, is kind of how it comes across. Do you have a lot of Shakespearean influence? Does that just come to you as you draft, or do you go back and edit it in? Or
I love Shakespeare. Love Shakespeare. And I love old fiction. I just love how the dialogue, how people speak to each other. I'm always trying to take down like little notes about turns of phrase I hadn't thought of. And oh my goodness, I found one the other day. This guy had been talking about how it was only between like in a short 200-year period that people were inventing words like sellsword and turncoat, where the verb comes first and then the noun with no on the end. Not like traveler, where you're one who travels, but the verb and then the noun. And I'm just so in love with that. I plan to put this in my next book, like so many insults that way. And he noticed that it was always negative things. Like it's never something you want to be. You don't want to be a turncoat, you don't want to be a sellsword, you don't want to be a lackwit. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. So I'm always writing down little notes of linguistics from the past that I hadn't noticed before and trying desperately to put it in there. Usually it's in my rough draft, but that's just because I'm a really weird drafter. I'm not someone who puts in like lots of authors have like insert scene here or fill this in later, and I can't do that. I can only write from beginning to end. And when I make a change, I start at the beginning and put the change in from beginning to end. So I take forever. But yeah, so that dialogue dialogue is usually there from the very beginning, and then I just kind of tune it up as I go.
That's awesome. It's even more magical that way. I kind of wish I'd read these on Kindle, because then I could have just highlighted through all these different passages that were so cool. I got Of Deeds Most Valiant as a Kindle book so that I could go back and search things and highlight them. But I can see the Shakespeare influence, definitely.
Thank you.
I'm now going to have to go research 200-year-old linguistics or what have you. So is there any tropes or themes or motifs that you find yourself coming to again and again? You mentioned pining is a big one, but are there any other things that are just staples of your work that you see?
I'm kind of obsessed with when you can turn something on its head. So if you come into something with an obvious weakness and you can turn that into some kind of a strength, and particularly in areas of self-sacrifice where like it seems as if you are losing and instead you gain or you win. I'm obsessed with that. I'm also obsessed with the idea of something is worth doing even if it doesn't get the result that you want. So, like famous last stands, or like the whole army dies in the big charge kind of thing. And people in the modern age will often look at that and think of it as a failure because they didn't achieve their goal. Everyone's dead. But I'm a little bit in love with the idea that a thing can be worth doing even if it seems like a tragedy. And so I love exploring themes of like self-sacrifice, loyalty, and doing a thing because it is just right to do, even if it doesn't seem like it's actually going to work for you. And of course, being an author, I can make it work for everybody. But those are the themes that I love.
I feel like I can see that in some of the books. I'm thinking back to where I have read that, and I did notice that appearing, where this theme, it's worth doing because it's the right thing, even if it doesn't necessarily turn out the way you want it to turn out. And I've talked about this in some of my reviews of your books. I went and I researched multiple times. I was like, is this actually a romance? Because I don't see how this is going to end happy.
Yes, it does sound like me.
I was like, I am experiencing doubt in this moment.
And because I'm a pantser, I end up in that situation and I'm looking at it thinking, now what do I do?
It's like, how's this going to work out? I have no idea either. Why are you looking at me? Okay, so what is the weirdest thing that's given you a story idea and you can't say a paper about the family dynamics in Bluebeard?
I'm so glad you asked me this because it reminded me of something I'd forgotten. When my kids were really small, they used to get me up at 5 a.m. and I'd live like a whole life before anybody else woke up on the planet. And if I went to go do like an errand or something, I'd load them in the car and I'd drive to town and I'd sometimes get places before anything was open. And they'd be asleep in the car and I'd just have to wait in the parking lot. So I was waiting one day in the Walmart parking lot of my town, and it was 30 below outside, so it's like so cold. And there was a guy, the only guy in the whole parking lot, is sitting there smoking. And the smoke, because it's so cold, is hovering around him in like weird little patterns and shapes. And I'm just sitting there staring at this guy smoking away with these hovering shapes of smoke. And I thought, what if when this guy was drawing in that smoke, instead of a chemical, he was drawing in spirits. And they like overwhelmed him and took him over and operated his body like a puppet. And that was my inspiration for writing my Summer Night books, where that happens to one of the main characters. And he's smoking, and when he does, it brings in one of the great legends of the past who takes him over and uses his body and does things in the world. And yeah, it came from this guy just sitting there having a smoke on a really cold day.
I started Summer Night on my Kindle and I need to go finish reading it apparently.
It's a bit rough. It's one of my older ones.
Is that the one where there's like the trackers who can smell?
Yeah.
They have like magical scent powers.
And the city-sized dragons, so all their cities are built on dragons, dead dragons.
Yes, that part. I thought that might be a myth when I started the book, but it looks like that's actually true. All right, well, I need to go read that book too. This is a little more. So what is the most memorable or touching message you've received from a reader?
I have two.
Okay.
One was more recent. It was right after I wrote Deeds Most Valiant. I got an email from a girl, and she had just attended her grandmother's funeral, and she'd read that book on the plane ride there, through the funeral, and then coming back, and she was talking about how she'd had a rough time, and the book had meant a lot in the middle of that, and that was just incredibly touching that she took that moment even just to tell me about it after she'd been through so much. And the other is there's a guy named Harold who's credited in almost all my dragon books, and he found me early on when I was writing my dragon school books, and he had just lost his daughter who had a lot of health problems. She had been a very young woman when she passed, and she had been living her life with disability, the same as my character in that book. And it meant a lot to him to see disability portrayed in a way where you live a full life and can conquer and can help your friends, and it doesn't slow you down in any way. I guess it reminded him of his daughter. And because he wrote to me, he ended up being like my reader through that whole series. And he said it meant a lot to him, but honestly, his input meant so much to me. I'm never going to forget that Harold did that for me.
Oh, so he read all of the Dragon School books? And
he essentially operated like a beta reader for me, even though I'm like the worst and won't have beta readers for anything else. It's my one guy for that.
Well, that is very special.
It is.
What is a theme, a retelling, or a topic you would like to write, and what would you like to bring to it?
Well, I'm right in the middle of writing Thrushbeard retelling.
Thrushbeard.
That's what Orbit's going to be putting out.
The Fisher King.
Yes, the Fisher King. Although they've changed the title to Her Fisher King. It's a 3-book series. But it is like it starts as a Thrushbeard retelling, kind of wonders like after book 1, as these things do. But I'm excited about that. And it's on the Fisher King myth at the same time. So it's both Thrushbeard and the Fisher King from Arthurian legend. I'm sure you're familiar. Yeah, being as it's you, Elizabeth, and you know all these things. So yeah, I was really excited to write that one, and I'm like dying for everyone to read it because it's been like the first book's been done for a while. It's like going through like the 100 million proofreads that you get with traditional publishing, and I'm like, I am dying to share this book with everybody. It's not coming till February 2026, so I'm going to have to be dying for quite some time.
Okay, but for people who may not be familiar, like what is a Thrushbeard and what is the Fisher King myth?
The old Thrushbeard fairy tale is the story of a girl whose father tells her that she has to get married. And he has like some candidates that she can choose from, and she refuses to marry any of them. And so he says the next person who goes through the door is going to be your husband, whether you like that or not. And in comes a beggar with, I guess, a crazy beard that looks like the tail of a thrush, according to the fairy tale. I had to look up what a thrush's tail is, but it's kind of like this. So he looks crazy and she has to marry him, and in the story it turns out he is a king, and she actually ends up in a great place, which is great for her because most of us wouldn't get that ending to that story. I don't have the father. I have the gods who tell her that she has to save her people. She has to marry the next person to wash up on her docks. And the Fisher King story is the story of the man guarding essentially the Holy Grail. And he has an never healing wound in his thigh. It's a big metaphor, although I didn't dig into the metaphor as much in my retelling. But so our Fisher King is just like the one from the legend with the big wound he's got to deal with.
I'm very excited to see how these two combine.
Oh, I loved it so much.
Without giving us spoilers, can you tell us what it is you feel like you're trying to bring to this story, that bring to these two retellings, or what it is you love about them so much?
Well, for me, I'm a big sucker for wounded main characters. So our male main character having this never healing wound, I'm like a sucker for people getting healed from huge wounds. And of course, I love the idea of people being thrown into a marriage that they didn't ask for and having to work with that. Both parties being like, okay, what now? And so I enjoyed that side of things, of working with it. And also, I was inspired by something that you said online, Elizabeth, because you were critiquing people who write enemies to lovers stories and nobody tries to kill each other. And so,
my heart is so warm in this moment.
And I thought, I think I can do one better than that. So I can't say more than that, but I think that you'll enjoy it for that reason. When you get to that part of it in like a year, remember it was for you.
Oh my gosh. Well, it's February 2026. Yeah. Okay, so it's only 9 months. 9 months from now, less than a year.
The length of a pregnancy.
Just the amount it takes for a human to exist. So that's the end of my questions. We just sped through them, but yeah, speed running. Usually 10 questions takes an hour to get through.
We're like just that good.
Or I just didn't ask enough questions. But where can people find you online? And I guess we talked about Her Fisher King coming up, but do you have anything else you'd like to tell us about?
I am moving. I've been exclusive with Kindle Unlimited my entire career, and I'm slowly moving my books wide. So if anybody is a Kindle, a Kobo, or a Nook reader, and they're wanting to pick up my books, they'll be slowly rolling out through summer and fall in those formats. And I'm everywhere as Sarah K.L. Wilson. Those are my middle initials. And at sarahklwilson.com.
Awesome. I remember the brief interlude where Amazon killed your account, and that sucked.
They gave it back to me, but I was very, very nervous. And so I thought, well, I guess it's finally time to pull that trigger.
Okay. Well, not relying entirely on King Bezos. So thank you so much for joining me today for this turned out to be a brief interview. We'll be sharing clips of this on social media once it goes live, and I'll be sure to tag you in those.